So, welcome back. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. That was wonderful. And as always, the tradition of Japanese lesson study and Talladega College, UNCF Innovation Center lesson study, we start first with the teacher of the lesson. Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
I want to thank everybody for your attention today and your attendance. I felt good about the lesson. I really did. Of course, there's always things you want to do better. And as I look back, I think I should have made the guided note sheets that I sent to the different dilemma groups. They could have been more specific to the topic because I wanted to certain meet out of those scenarios. So I should have done that a little bit differently. But I will say that's the first time I've ever done guided notes like that during my jigsaw. And I've done jigsaw a lot. And I've always thought I've got to start doing a note-taking sheet. And now I know I have proven to myself the importance of it, because they would always get back to the group and finish too fast when they were teaching to their home group. And that did not happen today. I don't know if it was the scenarios and the dilemmas, that was part of it because they were interested, or if it was because they had to have certain detailed notes down to tell about. And they're serious about their notes, and as they should be. Another issue, in a real world, I would rather none of them had been late. But we do what we have to do, and it was Sunday. So I'm just thankful everybody made it, and we were able to get the trios. And I thank you, Dr. McKay, for offering to step in. But I, as any teacher does, had already started formulating my plan, candidates, for what I was going to do for that number 3 person, because Dr. McKay was here to volunteer to step in, and I know other teachers would have if I had asked, but in the real world, I would have been the only other person in the room. So I would have needed to step in to be a number 3 or a number 2 in a group. And I'm sure most of you noticed that I had already assigned number 1. That's the video, because I was concerned that they might not be able to pull it up, because sometimes my copying and pasting into a URL is not as it should be. So I was a little concerned there, so I assigned the number 1s and had them have the video ready. And I would do that again in a real classroom, because there are always students that are early. So I would pick those videos out. And like I said before, I had never used a video scenario, but I liked it. I think I might try one with 3 videos. And because the reading, of course I'll always do the reading, I've always done it, but the videos, they finish seemingly a little faster, and they like those. Because the reading speed of the students is not the same, and of course no one's is, but anyway. So that's just some things that I have taken from the lesson. So I'm ready, open for feedback.
First of all, I enjoyed watching you with the jigsaw, because you told me about it, but I really had never seen you in action. So I did enjoy that and see how I can use it in my class. I do like the idea that you had already started thinking of an plan B. We as teachers have to think on our feet. um, the fact that you walked around to your groups, you told them the time. They had 5 to 7 minutes. I don't know if maybe you want to be exact and maybe put a timer up. So, and then, remind them, in a minute, how you have whatever. The engagement between the students was I think your notes, your questions were good because it gave them a direction, and they were able to follow it and go back to their tables and teach. It was very, I think, very good. Maybe if you're gonna use videos, get headphones, and you won't have to worry about the noise interrupting others. And like, we require students to bring headphones to class since we don't know if we're gonna go Zoom or not or whatever. So, the inquiry question, did you, or your objective was the dilemma? Okay. And I saw you had it posted there. And maybe I missed it. Did they know it? Did you tell them that in the beginning? Okay. I missed it. I missed that somewhere along the way. Um,
And
the,
if her co-pilot had been doing a little bit better, I could have pulled it up. I was trying.
the exit ticket was good.
Borrowed that from you. She's the exit ticket queen.
And then, you take that information in your next class, you go back over it. So, all in all, the the one thing was when they were, wait a minute, I wrote it down. They were at the table at the opening of your lesson, and you had them kind of like turn and talk, I guess. Um, and they connected it to like a life experience. You said, tell of a teacher that you that was trustworthy. I thought maybe you should at least have given them an opportunity to share out about the teacher that oh yeah, that they were, on each thing. And that way they'll get more ideas and thoughts from each other. And I know we were kind of under time constraints, right? But other than that, I think it was amazing.
I might not have needed all that introduction, but I felt like I did because that was the point of the lesson, was the code of ethics. So I felt like I had to do some type introduction, and I just basically did what I do, which is a little mini lecture with their involvement, because and then I have them, like Dr. McKay says, talk to the text. That's why I was doing underlining and highlighting and all that business. But I'll take a suggestion on a better way to do that.
Dr. Robinson, I thought you did an excellent job. I hope you can hear me through all of this, my regalia here. It's funny that Clinton and I were picking up on the same thing, so I guess you could say these are good suggestions that we're making.
And y'all were not even sitting there.
No, we weren't sitting close to each other. That's why I was going, she's taking all of my suggestions. I want everything to say. And so she did give me the side eye, but that's okay. But moving right along, the first thing I really appreciated was the fact that you took the standards and then you explained, had them think about what each keyword meant. Like Clinton, I was really curious to hear what they were going to say about a teacher that exemplified trustworthiness to them. And I think that would have been good for them to at least get as you say, find their voice, have their voice then, even though they had their voice all the way. But I was curious to see what they were going to say about those previous teachers and how they exemplified trustworthiness. So that was one of my suggestions. Of course, I was going to suggest headphones from the Dollar Tree, which somebody else suggested.
You talk a lot.
Obviously a little too much, but anyway. But it's kind of like we're triangulating each other, I guess you'd say, because we're both picking up on the same thing. I had never seen Jigsaw. I've heard you talk about it a lot. I like it, but I think that in this situation, your one should have spoken, your two should have spoken, and your threes, and then they could have discussed it with the others. I mean, that's just, but that's only because of this environment.
Because of the lesson study environment, you think?
Yes, because only to make sure that those who are not here and not able to go from table to table, even though they'll show up, would have been able to keep them engaged, I think, you know. Now, the students did a great job. The note-taking sheet was excellent, because when I went over and looked, they were really filling that sheet out, and I think that kept them on task. Now, I think you accomplished what you wanted to accomplish with Jigsaw. I'm just saying that with it being table to table, and there's nothing wrong with that, because, you know, we'll use it, that's the way it's used. But I just think maybe if we're doing something like this, maybe somehow give them an opportunity during that portion, early, before they have to go to it after they've discussed it. So maybe the ones could present the lesson, the twos could present the lesson. Right, you know, just thinking about that, and I'm thinking about from the perspective of the audience. But I think that as a activity, it's great. And I think you did a good job of using different mediums, such as using the videos and such as using actual paper copies, articles that they could review and talk about. But I think your guided notes were the key here. I think they really helped them stay on task. And of course, the exit ticket was always an excellent idea, because we need that information from our students to know what we need to review. So I thought that was great. And non-evasive, because they could just write it down and you have it to review and do the next time.
I thought you did it masterfully, and I thought the students responded. It was clear to me that they knew what to do, so your directions were clear. And I love the physical movement of it, and I know that when Wayne and I talked in the days before in the work prior, we had to be so cautious of something not showing up in a video, like, you know, somebody's leg sticking out or a cord or something. But we gave ourselves the grace that, you know, whatever happened when they moved, if it shows up in the video, it shows up in the video. The purpose of the video in here is to show other people how they might try this. And it also has to be useful enough to them and clear enough to them that they would actually buy into it. And I definitely think the feedback that I have received from the people who were doing the live stream, they said they felt like they were here. So they could see it and hear it, and that's Alan's movement. You know, he was moving around too to the small groups. I think I really like the fact that they started out at one place and then they moved to another. It also looked like to me, I couldn't tell, but you did not group them in any way. Is that correct? So they had choice of, you know, kind of what they did, and I think that is really powerful in the college classroom, as it is in all classrooms. I think choice, to me, particularly in FED 241, is powerful, because many of us were in schools, and I can't speak for the students, but I suspect they were also, you know, the work that they did might have been pretty didactic. They might have been assigned certain things. But the other thing is, I think this went extremely smoothly, and it was not a dog and pony show. You did not rehearse this with these students, because she and I have team taught this class. And I thought it was amazing. And I thought they stepped up to the plate, and now it's over for them, because we know what they can do, Dr. Robinson. It was amazing students. Very, very well done. I love the scenarios. I thought they were highly motivating. And we had heard that before. You know, when we got feedback from the state, you know, we talked a little bit about the fact that the ethics teaching and all of that, and how were we covering that with our students. Well, we now all have a way that we can use some scenarios in our classes. I want to do what you did with the reading that I had planned. My class ended up not being the class that I had planned, because so many of them were going to be gone. But I want to do the ethics of reading and reading assessment with my students. And I'm excited to get to see that I'll be able, I think I can pull it off. I may need you to talk me through it. I still don't quite have my head wrapped around it. I'm a little bit slow about, you know, the different areas, but I think I can follow your lesson plan. The context was extremely well organized, which I think for the AQ participants who are going to come up after us who want to try this, I think a lot of it is getting all of your tools and all of your materials together, and you certainly had that well done. And I think that the students were highly motivated and highly engaged. Now, I have scratched my brain to try to give you something that I think you might try, and I am speaking to myself. One of the things that I notice in the work that I've done with lesson study, I did not do it yesterday, and I knew that I should be. But I would advocate some note-taking, maybe as you're walking around, and just jotting down things to remember to say. And I would be speaking to myself also, because I don't do it enough, but I think it's a great model for our students. And I think that for the students who were here and for the students who were live streaming, that we did have some students who were watching, I think for them to see how this works, the process that you did was exquisite, and I think your content was right on target. This is FED 241, and in the state standards and the work, I was the one lucky enough to get to write that rewrite on the standards. They were actually supposed to be doing and participating in lesson study as part of their field work. So I'm very excited about the whole thing, but the only feedback I would give that I think would really be something that all of us will want to do as we're doing these lesson studies, and we should be doing it in every class that we teach. We should be taking notes and walking around. I have a tendency not to do it, and I don't know why. I think it may be, I may be just, I don't know, sometimes I just forget it. But we don't have so many students that we can't manage. Our memory is pretty good, but having all that data also might help us in the work that we're trying to do, like when we're trying to actually publish this. So that's just something FYI. We all probably need to be doing an assessment notebook, just like we ask our reading teachers and our mathematics teachers to do, like when they're walking around. But really, really good job. I really am grateful that I got to see it. And I have done Jigsaw, but I've never done it this well before. So now, Rhonda, you're up next.
I just really enjoy being able to sit back and let my wheels turn, and all the questions and wonderings that come up as I observe the lesson. I agree with what many of your colleagues have said about the selection of the material. Those, the video and the two readings were excellent selections because it did get the students talking. They had things to say about that. And I think sometimes that's the biggest challenge we face, is finding something that they really can connect to so that they have things to say. And I think those three selections were excellent for that. I also thought about the multiple moving parts in the lesson. So the complexity of the lesson had a lot of moving parts, and your what ifs, I think was a great way to think about, well, what if the technology doesn't work, right? Or the videos can't be pulled up. What's going to be my alternative to that? What ifs? And the important part about what ifs, I think, is for the teacher candidates to start to think about, well, what if a student struggles in the lesson? You know, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? What's my alternative there? So I think you modeled the what ifs for them very effectively. A suggestion about posting the inquiry question, I think is always good to have it up, just so that that is the same question that the students refer to all the time during the lesson, because we tend to change it. And we don't realize how just adding one word or taking one word out changes the context of the question, and now they're answering something different. So having that question posted, I think, is really important. I was wondering about the deeper purpose of the lesson. What I seem to have gotten from this, and please correct me if it's not what your intention was that you wanted the students to match the scenarios to the code of ethics. Is that correct? So one thing that I was wondering about is, what would it be like if the students were to be in the scenarios and talk about how they would respond to them? Because I think what came up as I listened to students discuss is their biases. And biases weren't brought up explicitly in the lesson. And I think the biases play an important role and influence the decisions that we make in ethical situations. So if they were in the scenario, for instance, you're a teacher and you help a student cheat on a test, what influences your decision to do that, right? And I think biases would come up there, and then have them then unpack how do biases then influence the decisions I make as a teacher. I was also wondering about leading questions and open-ended questions, because I noticed as you walked around to the small groups, I got the sense that the questions you were asking them were leading them to do something versus opening them up to think more deeply about it. So just just thinking about the difference between a leading question and an open-ended question. And I think this is something I've been wondering about since last night too, about yesterday's lesson also, is as teacher candidates and as teachers in a teacher preparation program, I don't know how often we pause ourselves to think about what assumptions we make about our students and how those assumptions impact what we then do in the classroom. So just a curiosity is thinking about, what assumptions do I have about these students and what they know? And how can I use those assumptions to meet them where they are, but also move them to the next level too? And a script. I wanted to say this yesterday, and I didn't think about it until last night, but I said, oh, I should have said that. I think a really important tool for teacher candidates is to script a lesson and have it and read it. Like, have it in your hand, read the script. And the importance of the script is, and I think both to yesterday and today were great examples of that, is we sometimes are our own worst enemy because we get sidetracked. A student says something and we go down that rabbit hole with them, and now the lesson no longer is about the inquiry question, we've taken it someplace else. Yeah, and so I really encourage teacher candidates to have a script and have your script in your hand and read it. It's okay, because what happens when you read that well-intentionally planned lesson is that your students are going to get what you wanted them to get out of the lesson and not be all over the place. The one thing I always think about is I'd ask my kids at the end of the day, well, what did you learn today? And when they look at me and go, oh, a lot, something, that was me because I wasn't very clear in my instruction that they could say, oh, we learned about this, this, and this. My own children, when they would come home, I'd ask, what'd you learn in school today? When there was something where the lesson was really explicit, they could tell me those things. And when most days they were like, oh, we learned a lot of things, and they really couldn't pinpoint. So I think the script allows teachers to be really explicit, and then your students can pinpoint exactly what they've learned in that lesson. But I greatly appreciate being here and just being able to share all of my wonderings and thinking about teaching and learning from this experience. So thank you.
One of my students that shared out said, and I forget who it was, that they had to put aside, was it Khadijah? Elijah? Did you say you had to put your biases aside?
I don't think I necessarily said bias, but my viewpoint was similar to that. It was kind of like I just had to look at it in terms of not where the person was, well, the student was like academically, because that only tells one side of the story. Like I was saying, like on situations and academic wise, because if you just look on paper, you see those two failing grades, like, okay, they're a failing student. But if you look at their situation matched up to the effort they put in and their grades, then it's like, okay, it might paint a whole different picture. It's like, are they doing their best, or are there still more that they could be doing, but they haven't been putting in their effort. But yeah, but in case you do have to put aside your own biases, because you still have to be, that goes to professional, with the professional conduct, being fair, like not to put your own personal biases into the decision making.
Well, my opinion was on it was just a lot of teachers, because I know like I have a lot of student-teacher relationship with like my past teachers, so they would tell me like when I was in school, like I was a good student and I did all my work, and so they made our relationship better. But it was some stuff that they had to put that to the side, just for me to be a better student. So like I don't know what class it was, but we was talking about something dealing with the student teacher, and I was telling one of my classmates that I used to be scared to talk in front of a group of people. So my teacher, she would want me to do certain stuff, but I wouldn't do it because I was scared to do it. And so she would allow me not to do it because, she liked me as a student and she know that my grades was good and etc. But she had to put that aside because she knew that I was gonna need to eventually get over that because I would have to talk especially if I'm gonna be a teacher, I gotta stand in front of a group of people or a class and talk to them. So I just figured out that you have to put that to the side once you become a teacher because it can either help a student or it can definitely hurt a student. So that's why my opinion was different from Elijah's because, if they pass the student, then because middle school to me is they still baby you, but they also give you a little leeway because you're getting older. So once that student get to high school, then depending on the high school, they not gonna baby you. So it's like then she definitely or gonna become a dropout. So I feel if she at least get the help she need from them and give that extra little push, then she can finish her last 4 years of high school, even though she is behind. So like I said, it can either help a student or hurt a student. So that's why you have to put it to the side.
Good job. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Rhonda, again for coming and being with us. And thank you, Dr. Robinson and the class. We really appreciate you all being here. We know on Sunday morning, it's not a good time. We thank you to the videographers, to Dr. Long for being here. She gave us a sense of confidence today. And to all of the AQ participants who will be up next, we have them on. So that concludes this portion of the lesson study. Now, if you all are taking notes, you are students in FED 241, this is a lot of the way that a true traditional lesson study will happen. The team, are considered the innovation team here. And when we say innovation, we agreed that we would try to take a technique, and ours was active learning because we know that active learning is tied to retention and recruitment of students. And that's what every college wants to do before they send their students out into the world. We want to retain you here at Talladega College and continue to recruit you to do good work for the college as well as for yourself. So we just think all the different layers of influence, and we have one more layer to go. And then if Wayne and the colleagues would entertain it, I would love to hear from the students because some of the students have now done this for 2 days. Do you think we have time to do it, Wayne? Okay, so let's have our next group up. That would be Dr. Long and the AQ team. And we do have a great many things that have been typed into the chat. Now, I assure you there is a way that we can probably figure out how to do this with the streaming piece and having people do it live, but I don't know what that way is, so we decided we would do it that piece in the chat. You can see that Derek is on. He's in the library. He opened the library this afternoon. And then I don't know who else is on, but just about everybody has typed in, and I guess I can be the source that reads those out after Dr. Long and Amanda talk a little bit about their feedback and their reflection on the lesson. So thank you again for another layer of influence and another layer of feedback from different perspectives. And I actually chose to use the term layer of influence from the school renewal research, and I think physically having all of the components of that should be very visual now to everybody, so that we see that we have multiple groups of people who want to enact this in different ways. And so we're going to start with our Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dr. Lisa Long, and we will hear her, and then we will go to Mandy, and then I will try to share the chat room.
Thank you, Dr. McKay. I had read a lot about lesson study with all the information that Dr. McKay sent to me, and also heard a lot about it when she talked about it. But these 2 days have provided great insight into what lesson study is really all about. I think the students did an excellent job. They were very responsive and engaged. And Dr. Robinson did a good job in her presentation. I particularly like the exit ticket. I kind of thought about, and I try to think about it from administrative standpoint as well. I sort of thought about it from an incorporating shared governance standpoint, that you consider the viewpoint of all the students or the participants in the lesson study, gives them shared responsibility and buy-in. I thought about it to teach, learn, and apply. Also, I like the real life scenarios that you gave them for them to apply what they had learned about the standards and to determine whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate actions on the part of the individuals. The voice, I thought expression was so important. With the exit ticket, I think I would take the exit ticket a step further. What could have been discussed differently to deepen your understanding of the topic would be the last question on the exit ticket that I end with. Or what was shared what could I have shared, or what would you have shared that could have been discussed differently to deepen your understanding of the topic or standard or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish for that lesson. And then I would also use that to collect data from each class to show effective teaching strategies and the knowledge gained. I would follow up during the next class regarding the students' response to deepen their understanding of the concepts and et cetera. I would also think about allowing students to, and maybe you select a different student for each topic as the semester rolls out, and so that they are not caught by surprise, but maybe for, say, a student will discuss ethical issues. This student will be selected for that particular class. And maybe at the end of the class, they might do a 10-minute lesson study and organize the lesson the way that they choose, and maybe have a silent critique afterwards with students and just provide some feedback at the next class. Also, I thought about the headphones. If you know that this is a technique that you would like to use throughout the semester, you might include headphones as an instructional supply and purchase those and think about a way to sterilize. So that it's nothing wrong with the Dollar Tree headphones, but if you think of it as an instructional supply, you might be able to use it semester to semester with your classes. Thank you.
First, let me say that I love the friendships that y'all have made in the education department. Like, I love that. And y'all can bounce off each other and learn from each other and gain from each other. That is so important in the educational field, because you need your teammates to help you, so you can learn what works and what doesn't work or whatever. So I love that. I love that. And then, as I said yesterday, I love the idea of active learning and how students are engaged with each other, especially your group. They always seem so engaged, or they have the past 2 days have seemed so engaged with one another. And so the teacher isn't actually just presenting content. It's just not the teacher's voice all the time. It's actually the student's voice, and they learn. Sometimes they learn better from their peers. So I love that idea of active learning, and I can't wait to get in my classroom and figure it out. And speaking of figuring it out, I think I can do this with the parts of speech. I think I can put the jigsaw method.
I thought about parts of speech.
Yeah, we need to talk.
I got a little English background.
We need to talk. I think I can execute that in my classrooms and it be effective. Because that seems to be like the biggest problem is parts of speech and commas. They're just hard. And I think they could, gain something from that. What else? I have lots of notes. I love the exit ticket. I'm going to try to execute that in my classrooms as well. And that's just, once again, to better yourself as a teacher. What are your students getting out of it? And what you can do as a teacher to better the lesson itself. So I love that idea. I think that's all I got.
I also think that it could be used across campus with multiple disciplines, actually with every department. And it may be a way of critiquing teaching strategies that is less invasive to faculty or less threatening because you just maybe move it around randomly.
Well, thank you all again. And Dr. Robinson, I did not say this earlier. I apologize. Do you have any questions of any of the groups that have spoken so far?
Dr. Long, let me make sure I understood this suggestion. Select a student to do a mini lesson on ethics, and then or a mini lesson study. Which did you say? Both?
It might be different topics that you have. Say you have 15 weeks. For the 15 weeks, you would select a different student each week.
Okay. Okay. Let's see.
I'm loving all of these ideas that we're getting. So I'm seeing real power in all of these different layers of feedback, because I think if Dr. Long had not said that, I might not have thought. And then when Rhonda also mentioned the idea of letting people be in the role of the particular people, you and I can do that, Dr. Robinson, with hot seat. That'll be a great technique, as you know, that we could actually do in the class. So I want to end now, not because these comments are not important, but Tiffany Sales, who is a psychology adjunct here, has bought in and really just given us such good feedback. The first person that sent me a text after the lesson today was that she felt like she was here, and it was live streamed. So Dr. Long, I would say that anytime we wanted to live stream a lesson or a lesson study to anyone who wanted to participate, all we have to have is Zoom and a really good iPad that is up to date. And we feel like, now I know that the bandwidth is strong enough here to carry that signal, and we could play around with it out of different departments and see. But she says that it has really been good. And Dr. Robinson, I'm going to use Tiffany's voice. She was just very ecstatic about your lesson, and she said you modeled excellence. She said there was clear expectation of the lesson, and it was continual active engagement of all capital ALL students. I appreciated your front loading and your review of vocabulary to quickly assess background knowledge. So Ms. Sales liked the fact, you talked a little bit about, the front loading, and you weren't having second thoughts about it, but you did consider. She said, I'm a firm believer of word power and love the terms, the home group and the expert group. The home group inferred a base connection, while the expert group clearly defined the expectation and the purpose of that group. I also appreciated that expert group had time to individually process the assigned selection before discussing it with the group. Dr. Robinson's continual support, guidance, and feedback evoke continual discussion, collaboration, and learning. I am certain that students had a sense of expertise in each of the sections shared today, and she said thank you. Then she said, I have not fully utilized this AQ tool, but plan to implement it in my in-person classes and hopefully in my online classes through the breakout groups with future classes after training. Thank you for modeling this strategy. And so for those of you who know about professional learning, it used to be a famous set of studies that said if you don't try something within 3 days of learning about it, you probably will not do much with it. So you can sit in professional learning and lesson studies all day long and do all this feedback and all this conversation. But if you don't do something pretty quick, the research does not hold that the professional learning has been impactful. I'm thinking that we will go next to Derek. Derek left and he's in the library, and he said it was an excellent presentation and method. I thought the students were very involved and had great discussions both today and yesterday. The students seemed to have very good discussions on ethics and the standards. And then he added, if I had one suggestion, it would be to also include a greater discussion on why these things are standards. Now, see, this is why, to me, and it's not just because it's Derek, but I think it's very powerful for different departments to have feedback from different people who do not do the same work that they do, because this is what he said, and this would actually be something that we could do, Dr. Robinson, with FED 241. He said, for example, focus on the power differentials between the teacher and the student. Any type of relationship between teacher and student creates power differentials in which one is more powerful than another. As a person in public service, you have the responsibility to hold those power differentials into account and to act responsibly with power differentials. And so that is so true in today's world. And we are seeing it enacted nationally now. And it's true, it's going to be something I feel like that young teachers really need to get their head wrapped around, because I didn't really grapple with it until I became a little bit older. But there is a real dynamic and power differential. You know, some of the students have heard me talk about the State Department. We do not make a lot of the rules that we have in our department, and it's basically not just the State Department, but it's our state school board and the state legislature that really does a lot of the the mandates. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that we all should be aware that it is there. And thank you, Derek, for saying that. And Tiffany, Alicia has repeatedly said, sent me messages, on the power. Alicia is our participant observer, and she will be doing a real thorough analysis of everything that she's seen. She said the focus question and the display provided was powerful for the students. Discussion of important vocabulary terms prior to the lesson was good, and she said, now remember, she does the same thing that we do. She is a dean at Stillman. Discussion of important vocabulary terms prior to the lesson was powerful. Overview of the Alabama Code of Ethics provided before the lesson was good. A jigsaw activity was engaging, and it was dynamic she said it was dynamic student interaction. Dr. Robinson monitored all the groups, and in the closing, the students reported their findings. She liked the exit ticket that was provided at the closing, and she says, future thoughts. The lesson was opened by reviewing the standards in detail. Did this allow the students to share their perspective or point of view before starting the lesson? Prior knowledge or misconceptions. If the outcome of the article was given, a person convicted of cheating, the student has little room to incorporate their point of view. Possible alternative might be only give a segment of each article and allow the students to determine the outcome. Now that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that, but I like that. What do you think, Dr. Robinson? You think we might try it?
That's right. Well, see,
Yeah.
the outcome was not given on promotion retention.
Okay, that's interesting.
And that's where we got the debate going.
Yeah. So that's a big aha to me right there. Very big aha. And often in lesson studies, you don't get it until about 3 days after it's over because you're so into it. But her language really has given us some thought, and Dr. Robinson's comments also. She said, then share the outcome of the article and integrate the Alabama Code of Ethics discussion. So she would have done it just a little bit differently perhaps, or maybe a suggestion if we do it again, Dr. Robinson, we might approach it that way.
I've got a whole book of dilemmas over there.
Yeah, and she says in caps, great lesson, teacher at heart. Thank you, everyone, for this wonderful opportunity to hear from all of these voices about one lesson on one day with one group of students. And the power in that is, remember, the smallest thing that we can do, we need to question what is the smallest thing that we could do that might make the most difference. So I encourage all of you to remember that little tidbit. Now we have one last group, and we are closing in now on the final. So we will now pull the students. Do you think, Wayne, that we can get the students in this? Just a quick whip around. Will it be okay if they stay where they are and we move back?
With the mic.
Okay, all right, perfect. And then we will move over here. Thank you all.
I've had Dr. Robinson for like up to 3 years now, and she never fails to impress me with all the things that she's done in her classroom. It keeps me very engaged because she knows I love to talk. You know, all y'all know I love to talk, and it kept me very engaged, and like it opened my mindset to different opportunities. And so this is something like I would really want to use as a young male teacher in the classroom.
This was very, very informed because like it gives a lot of different scenarios. One like controversial. Well, actually, pretty much all of them are pretty much controversial, but it shows a lot of examples that really actually happen in the teaching world. So it was more so of like a learning experience to know like if you ever were to come across this, then you know like how, well, maybe not necessarily how to exactly deal with it, but you have a better understanding of how to plan it out. And then it also actually helps. It's like a kind of like a double-sided thing because it also gives good, so part of his lesson studies that you can use in your own classroom, like how we just did what's called the jigsaw. Yeah, so you can do methods like that, and so in your classroom. But it was a good study.
I've had Dr. Robinson for maybe 2 years and Dr. McKay for 3. And honestly, I've learned a lot in education, being that this is my first time really being in education. And who would have thought I would love doing something from teaching to now even seeing that I've learned stuff on my end for my own learning disability. And honestly, I have to say it's a life-changing process to get and to take back with you for when you do start to become a teacher candidate. And maybe you could inform like other students who've had those problems as you, and now you know what you could tell them and help them out along the way with the process. And yeah, honestly, I'm thankful for it. So yeah.
The lesson today was great. This is really one of my first education classes. It puts us in the mindset of what would we do if we were in these situations. The jigsaw kind of creates a classroom within the classroom, if that makes any sense. So it gives us an opportunity to use our teaching skills and the things that we've learned here.
Today I feel like, today's lesson was great. I feel like the questions that we were asked really brought us back and, had us thinking about what happened in high school, which like, it feels like every class I'm in throughout these years for education, it always brings me back into when I'm in high school and like, what can I do better when I become a teacher? And it's like, I feel like, once I'm graduated, I'll be the best teacher because it's like all of these hands-on activities that we do, it really helps us. And
also with all the questions and discussions that we get, you know, it helps our voice also, so we are able to talk a lot. Yeah, thank you.
I would say overall today was great. I actually took Dr. Robinson at psychology class last semester. So it was a refresher to go over the ethical standards, and it put us in a perspective. If we was to ever be in this situation, what would we do as a teacher and how would we handle it? So I feel like all the lessons we have with each professor prepares us for when we become teachers in our classrooms.
I like when we take Dr. Robinson, McKay, and Dr. Bridgewell and Dr. Clinton class because they teach us like what we need to know to go into the field, but they also model. So we actually get like a 2-in-1 lesson. So they teach us what we need to know, and then they model it. So this is what I actually love about their class. And today was good because we also learned what you should not do. And so, like Dr. Sun said, if you was to ask us if we was that teacher in that position, but I honestly don't want to think like that because I honestly do not want to be in that position, especially with the Atlanta case because I cannot do jail. So, so I think it was an overall good lesson from Dr. Robinson and Dr. McKay. So, yeah.
Today has really been an aha moment, the last 2 days, but I think with the pandemic and asking faculty to load the portal, this was an excellent model of how a class can be done. And you could also engage your students at home in a breakout room on Zoom. And so they have an opportunity to engage, and then you would be able to allow them to have conversation with the class. I think Tiffany said it best. It felt like she was here. Tiffany Sales, the adjunct professor. So this is an awesome way to incorporate what we've been doing with faculty and students. Some students don't feel safe coming in, so this is a perfect example, so you model that well.
And I will add that the library has partnered with us and been instrumental in making this work happen. And we're grateful to Alan because I could not envision how to make all of these moving parts happen. And so the first group I went to, after talking to Dr. Long, I do not have the expertise that they have. And it's always like as a teacher, like you will see that you will have the opportunity to do multidisciplinary work, and you always try to seek out people that, first of all, that have the expertise that you need, that you do not have, and you know you can't build quickly enough. And secondly, there's a lot of trust between all of us, and everything that has happened in this room shows trust. And you can't really do anything that is powerful in school. You have to build a community and you have to build trust. And I just want to thank everybody, including the videographers, the young men who volunteered, and Wayne has so graciously said, come partner with me. And we just want to thank all of you. And I don't want to negate anyone, even the people who are out there in the streamland. I still can't get my head wrapped around exactly how that looks, but I'm hoping that we're going to be able to play with some live streaming. And I've had a lot of ahas about getting field experiences for our students who cannot get them during COVID and who are very, very worried about going into schools. And I think if we could pull this off today with an iPad and a bandwidth strong enough to do the live stream, I believe we can live stream lessons, which has been my dream since I hooked up with Amy Richardson over in Wedowee. We wanted to watch those high school classrooms in active learning, and she and I talked about it, and if it is this simple, I think I can do it. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you